Amunhotep II acceded to the throne at the age of 18, having ruled alongside his father Thutmose III for around 2 years before the latter's death. Originally, Thutmose's heir was his firstborn Amenemhat, but Amenemhat had died some years prior. Amenemhat's parentage is in question. Not his father, all records indicate he was indeed Thutmose's son, but his motherhood is disputed by modern scholars. It was either Sataya, Thutmose's queen, or very possibly a woman called Neferere. For those playing the home game, Neferere was a daughter of Hatshepsut. Generally, Egyptologists take Sataya as Amenemhat's canonical mother because it's not at all proven that Neferere and Thutmose were ever even involved. But anyway, why is this important to Amenhotep's story? Well, Amenhotep II is a king almost defined by his insecurities. His father was a highly accomplished military commander and oversaw Egypt's rise to a regional superpower. And try as Amenhotep might to erase Hatshepsut's existence as pharaoh, his project to do so wasn't very thorough, so her shadow hung over all of Egypt. If Amenemhat had succeeded Thutmose, and if Amenemhat had been Hatshepsut's grandson, he would have represented the union of two royal lines. Hatshepsut had been Thutmose I's heir, Thutmose had been Thutmose II's heir. So, if Amenemhat was the son of Neferere, he would have ended forever any question of who was the more royal, who was the most eligible to be pharaoh. You might think it's difficult for someone's motherhood to be ambiguous, but it's absolutely possible that Amenhotep believed his elder half-brother to have been doubly royal, and to have felt insecure about this even though there was no question of his heirship. After all, in part to make sure that succession went off without a hitch, Amenhotep was brought to rule alongside his father. But Thutmose had fathered at least 10 children with various women, very likely not just with his 2 consecutive queens. How could Amenhotep ever be sure that Hatshepsut didn't have a few secret children and grandchildren waiting in the wings? He never actually met her, by the way, she predeceased him by about 16 years, so he had no personal grudge against her. His insecurities were all dynastic, so to make sure he was not only the legitimate heir of his dynasty, but also the progenitor of the rest of it, Amenhotep had to try to diminish Hatshepsut. His own mother, after all, Merit-Re Hatshepsut, no relation, was a commoner, which added to his insecurity. Amenhotep more generally seemed to prefer limiting female power. He eased off on the privileges of the god's wife of Amun, a senior religious title that had once belonged, would you know it, to Hatshepsut. His own wife, who might have been a half-sister, it's not clear, was called Tia, yet despite being his only known consort and entitled to be known as Amenhotep's queen, or great royal wife as the Egyptians would put it, the pharaoh never granted her this title. Tia's dignity would not be vindicated until her son took power, at which point she would be recognised as king's mother, royal wife, and god's wife. More to the point, she appears beside her husband on not one single monument. And it wasn't just Tia. Other royal women, Amenhotep's sisters for example, were kept out of public life as much as possible. So insecure, he couldn't stand the idea of there being any woman in Egypt who thought she could follow in Hatshepsut's footsteps. He so diminished the title of god's wife of Amun that it wouldn't be granted again until the next dynasty. Amenhotep was a renowned athlete and a competent military commander. In fact, he was so successful in maintaining borders that Egypt's great rival at the time, the Kingdom of Mitanni, finally capitulated and ceased all resistance. The two nations would remain at peace from that moment until Mitanni was conquered by the Hittites. One interesting contradiction about Amenhotep II is that while he was publicly disdainful of foreigners, he oversaw the importation of several foreign gods into the Egyptian religion, including Baal and Astarte. Baal was syncretized, that is, depicted to be the same being, as the long-honoured outsider god of chaos, Set. Astarte was seen as a daughter of either Ptah, the creator god, or, of course, Ra. By the way, the Canaanite pantheon, which originally included Baal and Astarte, also included a wee little supreme being called El, whose name became a metonym in Hebrew for any deity, up to and including Yahweh, who of course is quite famous in pop culture, even to this day. Following his death somewhere in his 40s or 50s, Amenhotep was buried, at first in the Valley of Kings, and later in the royal cache at Deir el-Bahri. Nowadays, following the Golden Parade in 2021, his remains are housed in the National Museum of Egyptian Civilization. Amunhotep spent his whole reign trying to seize control of his dynasty. We know that in the end he failed to an extent. Hatshepsut is famous and fairly uncontroversially regarded as one of Egypt's most effective pharaohs. But he even failed to secure his own succession. His preferred heir was his son Amenhotep, but when the time came it was a younger son, the soon-to-be Thutmose IV, who was given the dual crowns. It's also arguable that by introducing so many foreign deities, Amenhotep had set a precedent for a new kind of religious thinking, for something revolutionary, which over a century later would ensure the end of the very dynasty he sought to be an integral part of. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe for weekly videos, and if you like this one, how about taking the like button for a pleasant boat ride up the Nile? The foreign deities I've imported to oversee the downfall of my dynasty are my backers at patreon.com/armchairegypt, who have my eternal gratitude. Until next time, my fellow armchair Egyptologists, life, prosperity and health to you all. Thanks for watching. Head over to my channel for more, or click here to see what the YouTube demons think you should watch next. I hope you'll consider subscribing. If you'd like to support and collaborate on the channel with me, go to patreon.com/armchairegypt. You can also join my Discord community, there's an invite link in the description.